James Askew, a student at Wamsutta Middle School, who's working on his communications merit badge to lead us in the pledge. James?
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you, James. Welcome to today's regularly scheduled meeting of the school committee of January 14th, 2019. This is your notice that this meeting is being electronically recorded. This time I'll turn it over to the superintendent for an introduction of our spotlight program tonight.
We're very excited this evening to provide a spotlight on our newest Chapter 74 CTE program, which is criminal justice, and to describe his program and introduce us to the students that he's brought with us today is our criminal justice teacher, Mr. Toby Reed.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Toby Reed. I'm an employee of Attleboro Public Schools. I've been here for 20 years. In those 20 years, I've had the opportunity to present to this board on multiple occasions on multiple topics. Today is the first time I'm presenting on this particular topic, and I'm quite proud of it. So, 3 years ago, we were working on creating the Chapter 74 program for legal and protective services, also known as criminal justice. We had an employee at the time who needed to take some time off due to some personal family matters that she needed to take care of. We then had a gap where we needed to hire a temporary part-time employee for a kind of take over that job. I was still the coordinator of the social studies department at the time. I stepped in so that we didn't lose the funding and have to shut the program down. I took it over for a year, figuring that I would take it over for a year, give Ms. Montagano a year to find a certified teacher and start running the program. But in that year, I worked with an amazing group of kids, and I decided that I did not want to leave. So I was fortunate enough to get certified by the state. Stepped full-time into the program last year, and this is my first year with students who have made it from freshman year all the way through senior year. So this is my first cohort to go through. So I'm presenting to you guys today to talk a little bit about how we built the program up, how it works, and that sort of thing. The program was originally designed between a conversation between then Mayor Dumas and Chief Hegney. There was a need in the community to develop people who wanted to work in the criminal justice field. So they kind of helped pave the way to get the funding for this particular program. The job is to kind of prepare kids for a variety of jobs in the criminal justice field, anything from victims advocates to social workers to law enforcement to federal law enforcement to lawyers to judges to everything else that you can imagine. So as I tell the students, if you can think of a job, we can probably find you a job in the field. If you want to sit behind a computer all day and never talk to another human being, there's a job in the criminal justice field for you. If you never want to sit behind a computer and all you want to do is be outside, we can find a job in the criminal justice system. So it's a very wide field. And one of the things when I kind of first took over is I had a conversation with Ann and as well as with Assistant Superintendent Regan about what is my role as a Chapter 74 program working inside the community. So it's obvious, I think, how does automotive react with the community? The community can drop their cars off and get them serviced. If you want to come to the Blue Pride Bistro, you can come to the Blue Pride Bistro. What role does the criminal justice program play in working with the community? Apparently it's not legal to have our own private police force, nor is it legal for us to provide law advice. So we decided not to do those things. So one of the things that I've tried to work on, especially with level 1, which is the sophomores, is providing them with a ton of voices from the community and people who work in these jobs, because there's so many diverse jobs that it's worth hearing from a variety of people. So local, state police, federal agencies, the DEA, the Secret Service, the FBI, Office of Inspector General, they've all come in to talk to the kids. We've had lawyers come in, we've had defense attorneys, we've had prosecuting attorneys, we've had U.S. Attorney's offices come in. We have judges who have come in, we've had corrections officers who've come in, we've had social workers who've come in. So trying to show these kids that there's a million jobs out there so that they can kind of widen their perspective. One of the things that I did not necessarily anticipate, but I was really happy to find, is how many people in Attleboro can contribute to the program. So obviously Chief Hegney has been a huge support. He's provided support if I need specific officers to talk about specific things. He's also provided some feedback on the program, and they've worked with us on a variety of things. But Dave Johnson, who is a head of global security for Dunkin' Donuts Baskin-Robbins brand, he lives in Attleboro. He has kids in the system. He's reached out to me. He's provided a ton of valuable information for me. He's come and worked with the students on a variety of topics. Shelley Binkowski is a U.S. Federal Postal Inspector. She has kids in the system. She's now working with us. She's coming in next week to work on with the kids, talk to them about investigations and how to get a job in the federal agencies. Jessica Pooler is works for the U.S. Attorney's Office in Boston. She's a Attleboro resident. She has kids in the system. She's come in. She works for the victims advocates for the U.S. Attorney's Office. She's coming in and worked with the seniors on some of their senior projects. Dr. Mia Ortiz is a college professor at Bridgewater State University in criminal justice. She lives around the corner. She's come in, worked with my seniors, and we're working on some projects that I'm going to promote in a second. Coogan Smith is coming in later this week. They're sending in a representative to work with my defense team on a project that we're working on now. So there's a variety of people who come in and help with the students. We're also trying to figure out, once again, how these kids can get involved in the community itself. So for level 1, which are my sophomores, one of the things we do usually around this time is we're working on our mock trial. So we do a whole unit on trial courts, and Judge O'Shea up at the district court has been very helpful. He lets us use second session up there. We actually go and we do the trial in the courtroom. He provides a DA to help and work with the team. We have some defense attorneys come and work with the team. Then they act as judges, and the kids get to present their case literally behind the bar. And then Judge O'Shea comes up and usually talks to the kids, little one-on-one with them. Then he also comes into the classroom later and helps out with them as well. At level 2, we're working on a lot of police patrol procedure, and I think Assistant Superintendent Regan's going to talk about it. The police have been using the high school for the past month or so doing some safety drills, and they've reached out to my program, and I've had kids working with the police department. And the police department has been gracious enough to take in my students and work with them. And then next week, we're going to bring some students down, and they're going to work with the police on some of their, they're going to help us with some of the safety drills that they work on as well. We're also, right now with my level 2 class, we're working with the deans at the high school to help draft a statement of discipline and kind of work with the restorative justice practices that Be Heard is working on. So some of my kids are going to get involved in what is the theory of discipline and what should the justice system be inside the high school, if you will. And hopefully by the end of this school year, I'll be back here with a couple other kids, and we'll be presenting that theory to you guys. If not this year, hopefully the beginning of next year. Then with my level 3 class, we've got them FEMA trained on risk management, and we've been working with Jason Parento, and we've been doing some site assessments for all of the buildings in the district. So last week, I brought 2 students to Coelho, and they worked with Jason and another small team to walk the perimeter of the building, walk the inside of the building, do some risk management stuff for them. This Thursday, I'm going to send 2 students over to Thatcher Elementary. Then we're going to kind of regroup and talk about what we're doing, and then we're going to plan the other 7 buildings to do risk management stuff there. Excuse me. My level 3 class is also working on senior projects. Where part of the senior project is reaching out to the community and finding people in the community that can help them with whatever research question they're trying to research. And we have everything from mental health in the law, we have corrections, we have people who are working on diversity, LGBTQ rights in the law, we have people who are working on women in criminal justice, and so we have a variety of topics that my students are reaching out, looking for help with. And then the final thing that we're working with my seniors is working with Dr. Ortiz and Bridgewater State University. We're presenting a speaker series where Bridgewater State University and Attleboro Public High School's criminal justice programs proudly present. We're going to be doing it at BSU Attleboro, and we're going to be doing it the second Wednesday of every month from 6 to 8 p.m. I have flyers for you that were designed by our graphic designs department, so if you could just pass these down to John. Our first one is going to be next month, and the topic will be school safety, so if anyone is interested in talking about that, that seems like a timely topic to discuss. We're going to have some professors talking about it. We're going to have some representatives from Attleboro Police Department. We're reaching out to the FBI right now to see if they wanted to come in. We're going to reach out to U.S. Attorney's Office, see if they have something to say. Then the next month, in March, we're going to be talking about mental health in the law. Then in April, we're going to be talking about dating violence and domestic violence in the 21st century, and we're actually going to focus a little bit in on kind of cyber crime and cyber harassment in that situation. So we're going to get some experts in that field to come out and talk about that. And then our final one is May, where we're going to talk about diversity in the legal system. We're going to look at Title IX. We're going to look at the civil rights laws. We're going to look at some of the stuff that we're talking about in the community right now with race. We're going to talk about LGBTQ rights. We're going to talk about a variety of things. So Bridgewater has been kind enough to donate their space. They're also donating food, so there will be food and beverage, which is a huge selling point, I know, to most people to show up. It'll be open to the public. I'm using this opportunity to promote it right now, so I don't know where the camera is, but anyone can come and please show up, and it'll just be an open conversation. So, would love for people to be able to come and listen to some of the experts talk and then ask some questions and kind of work. So in response to the question I had about how does my program work inside the community, I feel like this is some of the things that we do. We provide the community with a place to come in. We go out and reach out to the community, and ultimately, I think what benefits is everyone benefits. I think the students benefit from a richer learning experience by working with experts in the field, by talking to people who are doing the actual work, by getting out there and doing some of the work. I also think that the community gets to see how impressive some of the students are and get them out there. And so hopefully they'll, hire them and give them all good jobs. So that's kind of the way that I've kind of developed the program after the last couple of years. I brought some of my colleagues with me, so I'd like to call up some. I have 4 colleagues right now. I have 2 of them who are with my level 1 program, so they're sophomores. I have Jessica Woodbury, and I have Sarah McDonough. And then for my seniors, my level 3 class, I have Cameron Griswold, and I have Madison Dent. No one from level 2 the people who are going to come from level 2 today are both basketball players, and so they were both playing tonight, and so they robbed me of my opportunity to have all 3 levels here. But if you have level 1 and level 3, I think you can guess what happens in level 2. So I'd like to just call these guys up and then have them talk a little bit, and feel free to ask them any questions after they're done or right away, or if you have any questions for myself. So why don't you guys step up, and we'll do these 3 chairs here, and then we'll pull this chair around. Yes, you want to take this one? And then Cameron's in the big one, that's all it is. All right, get that one.
Welcome. Thank you guys for coming. And thank you for coming back to school on a Monday night. I appreciate that. I don't know if you talked to Mr. Reed about how you guys wanted to proceed, but we'd love to hear, about your experiences and with the program and what you like about it.
Well, do we want to start with level 1 and kind of show where it starts?
Sure. So, my name is Jessica Woodbury. I'm in level 1. I'm a sophomore. So, as of now, we are doing a unit where basically we started out and took the role as if we were in the shoes of a detective. And we looked at this case and we figured out what the story was and what to do, pretty much. Because there's a lot more jobs to it, and if you break it up like that much, we would not have enough students. But we broke it down, we look at all the interviews, we look at like forensics reports, we look at as much information as it gives us, and we put an arrest warrant on somebody. And now we are put into prosecution and defense, and we are arguing whether or not we believe somebody is going to jail. So that's a lot of fun, and it's really good because it helps with argumentative skills, which like probably the most key thing with a lot of jobs. So that's really fun. We've done a lot of presentations that's like really eye-opening. I like half the jobs I don't even know of, and then it was like mind-blowing to find out those are things. So that's a lot of fun, and it's really good to have.
Okay.
Sorry, I kind of covered.
Yeah. My name is Sarah. Jess did cover a lot of it. Yeah, we basically started out learning a little bit about law enforcement and searching and frisking and things like that, and we kind of slowly developed into doing our mock trial. We're going to trial February 8th, right? Yeah, and we're going to the courthouse then. And one opportunity that I also got while I was doing criminal justice was I got the opportunity to become a part of a program called the Junior Explorers, which we basically go to the police station once or twice a month and learn a lot about policing and kind of what it means to be a police officer and see it from a perspective that's not the news and not the media and what really goes on behind the scenes, which was a really great thing.
So my name's Maddie Dent. I am a senior here at Attleboro High School, so that means I am in level 3. I am a part of the first graduating class out of the CTE program, and I have to say that I carry that with a lot of pride because I have to say that the CTE is probably one of the most amazing and just so eye-opening and really I feel does prepare you for the real world. Right now we're doing a lot about risk prevention and safety within our schools, and I think that is a really timely matter that I think is really fantastic that we as students have an opinion on, considering that it's concerning our safety. Lately we have become FEMA certified, as Mr. Reed has already mentioned, and our next task is to be going to the middle schools and elementary schools here in Attleboro and kind of pointing out some issues that we see within the schools and how we can fix them, and just basically trying to provide better safety for our students. Something here at Attleboro High School, we noticed that the lockers were a big problem, that a lot of people were not using a lot of the lockers that we have here. And I'm sure you know this is a very large school, and that means that we have so many of them. And so Mr. Reed was telling a story of how a certain suitcase ended up in a certain locker, and it was perceived that it was actually a threat to the school, but it ended up not being one. And so it turns out that the school went around and bolted all of the unused lockers. So that was really fantastic to see a change. I don't think that the school knew that we found that out as a problem, but it just so happened that when we noticed it, they seemed to notice it and fix it. So that's basically what we hope to do with that, is just kind of going around and seeing those things that maybe other people don't see and bringing it to their attention to fix. Something that's a little bit different from helping the community. This program provided me with the opportunity to find my love for law. And I am actually the founder and captain of Attleboro High School's first mock trial team. So a little promo to that. We competed last year in our first season. We won 1 of 3 trials. This year, our big hope is to beat Franklin. We are competing against them this Friday, so cheer us on. Something about me, seeing as I am a senior, my hopes are to obviously graduate high school first. And then I really hope to attend Clemson University and receive my bachelor's degree in political science and come on back home and get my law degree, so then that way I can practice family law and help kids that are under advocated for in our system. So basically, if there's a child who has two parents that are unfit and they're too young to advocate for themselves, I hope to be able to advocate for them and find them that perfect home, so in that way they don't end up in situations that they shouldn't be in. So I guess my ending story is that criminal justice is really amazing, and I feel it really provides an amazing opportunity for students.
Hi, I'm Cameron Griswold. I also fell in love with criminal justice as soon as I entered the door, and as a level 1, and as the years progressed to a level 3, which just happened like that, it just went by too quick, honestly. And it's my favorite part of the day is going to criminal justice. One of the things that we really learned is that going into criminal justice, it kind of opened my eyes to what I really wanted to do with my life. And it's I thought it was very narrow, all the stuff, but Mr. Reed kind of opened our eyes to all the stuff we could do, and constantly taught us new things that we could learn, made us better at what we were doing, and made us better people in the end, really. Matt really covered a lot of what we've been doing at the school, but honestly, after high school, my plan is to go to SNHU and graduate, move up to New Hampshire, and become a ranger up there in New Hampshire. And I didn't know, I kind of found out about that job by just looking at, it's kind of an overload of all the stuff, all the things that you could do just in the law enforcement community. And I am a part of the Junior Explorers, which I have been doing for about 2 years, and I didn't know about that until Mr. Reed told me. And it was just all the things that it's just having this program has helped me and so many other kids try to progress into law enforcement, law jobs and stuff like that, and learning all new things.
Something that I forgot to mention, sorry, that's also really, there are so many amazing things about this program, but one of my favorites is as seniors, we're able to go out into the community, and I think that's absolutely amazing because being able to go out and work in a field that you think that you're interested in is really fantastic. Since I can remember to about my freshman year, I wanted to be a veterinarian, and then my horse split his eye open, and I was like, no way, so gross, can't do it. And so I came into high school, and I was like, well, what am I supposed to do now? What do I want to do? And so I actually, through Mr. Reed, was able to get my first job at a law firm, working for a local firm. And then with that experience, it allowed me to get a job working in Norwood with a very large, family law firm. So it really just provides you this great space that you're able to kind of grow in and really start to form your adult life, which is a little scary, but also fantastic at the same time. So,
Do you guys have any questions at all?
Any questions or comments, Mr. Storrs?
I'd love to hear how each of you, I heard it a little bit, but how everybody ended up deciding to take this as part of their CTE program. I don't think 4 years ago it was offered an exploratory yet because it wasn't here yet. So I'd love to hear
4
how.
years ago, it was an exploratory. Maddie and Cameron took it an exploratory, but
They did.
But with Miss Lyden as the teacher at the time.
Okay,
And
so it
then that
was,
offered a grant.
right.
And so when they signed up for the program, they signed up for the program thinking that, one, they weren't sure if Miss Lyden was gonna be there or if there was gonna be a program.
Right.
I actually never got to go through
Oh,
the
that's right,
criminal
you-
justice CTE. I
yes.
kind of just took it on a blind eye.
I kind of walked into the class and as a wide-eyed freshman, I was just kind of all these choices of different CTEs I could take, and I just talked to Miss Lyden, and she was a really good teacher too. She taught me a lot about the program, but it was really also awesome to have Mr. Reed as a teacher for the past 3 years, because he has been one of the best teachers that will listen to a student, hear for a student, and change the class just for the students, just to make it better for a good learning environment and how to basically better ourselves.
The first I ever heard of the program was in middle school. They had a presentation on the CTE program, and they had a video and things like that. And there were several that I was interested in. I was interested in childcare, I was interested in medicine, and I was interested in the criminal justice. Went through the CTE, eliminated childcare, did not like it at all. Then I went and come sign up time, I applied for both criminal justice and medical, but I fell into criminal justice, and I really do love it. It is a great class, and been doing it since then.
my story is a little bit more complicated because I actually fought to get into this class because I knew that I wanted to be into it. So, I mean, I've known for like since middle school that I've always like loved doing sort of like debates and stuff. From being a younger sister, I have a great argumentative skill. So I have that backing me up. So I always knew that I found debates fun and like something that could be very serious, but I could enjoy doing. And so knowing that there was a criminal justice club, I knew that I was probably going to enjoy it once I did the exploratory program that's offered here. So I went through, for a good chunk of time, I thought I was going to do medical for some reason. Didn't like that. Went to all these things that I thought might work with me, but didn't really. So when I went into exploratory, I became the judge, and I learned a lot more than I anticipated. And it was like very eye-opening for me, and I just knew that I wanted to be in it because it was honestly amazing. So come time to go for my classes, and I actually was on the waiting list. It was decently up there, but I was not in because there was originally like a limit. But I knew that I really wanted to be into it, so my mom, who happens to be behind here watching, as a team, we kind of argued and said that I was really passionate about this. This was something I really wanted to do. I've always kind of had a love for debates, and I knew that this was where I would have to focus on if I wanted to use that skill as an adult. And he said, yeah. I lucked out. I happened to be the 21st person, so that was really difficult, but I knew that I had to do it because this is what I want to do with my life.
For me, I went, like I said, into high school not really knowing what I wanted to do, and I come from a very large military family, so apparently that's not accepted. So I went through the CTEs and kind of the theme, I really thought I'd be into this or that, and then I'd get there and be like, ooh, I don't know if I want to do this for 4 years. And for a really long time, I was into CIS, and I wanted to do computer hacking and go into the Air Force and do all these things, and then nothing just really seemed to be sparking my passion. And one day, I sat down with my dad, and I really just started talking about, well, this is what I like to do, this isn't what I like to do, I want to do this, I want to do that. And it really just came down to the fact that I thought about what's something that I would be okay with doing for the rest of my life. And my parents, myself, are divorced, and to be lucky enough to advocate for myself and where I wanted to live and how I wanted my life to be really made me realize that going into a program like criminal justice was really going to enable me to do that. And I was lucky enough where I fell in love with it. So.
Thank you. Great. Any other questions, comments? Mr. Geddes?
I just want to commend Mr. Reed. I mean, in developing a program, we have the check boxes of an ideal academic program: relevant learning, community engagement, and great firsthand experiences. And this obviously does all of that, that they're actually in the courthouse frequently, that they're hearing all of the different potential career options. That I agree. As I sit with students interested in criminal justice, a lot of them think, well, yeah, I was thinking about criminal justice, but I really don't want to be a cop. There's so much more than that. So thank you for developing this the way you have, and keep up the good work.
Mr. Quinn?
Is there any aspect of the law or legal rights that you've learned over the course of your time in class that really surprised you? So I think one of the things that, I'll speak just for myself, is that my own ignorance of the law and what's my rights is something that I think is a knowledge gap. And particularly as we start to shift into civics with the history curriculum, I think this piece is really critical. So is there anything about the law that you've learned that surprised you or that would surprise most people?
Honestly, for me, when we started learning about your rights within school grounds, blew my mind. I was like, this is crazy. I never knew you had the right to this or not the right to this. And that's honestly the reason why I created my mock trial team, was because there's the joke that I'm the lunch table attorney, because I provide apparently a lot of great insight, even without a law degree, so that's a lot going for me. But just being able to have that knowledge of your rights, of exactly what you were saying, is like being able to know that I have a right to this, I do not have a right to this, and I think it provides a lot of just insight I think that's like something that really at least I found so amazing to learn, was just knowing like what you have a right to and what you don't.
It's very, very in-depth, and as a child going in as freshman year, you don't really know all of that. I mean, I know what I was taught and up till then, and then I don't know anything else really besides whatever I chose to look up at my free time. So I didn't really know how in-depth these were at the time, and like going in, it's so like eye-opening, because it's like I don't realize until you really look at it how like specific these are, and it's like very fascinating to find out, because I'm learning to be an adult in a way. It's like I would have never known this, and it's just in a way it's like I can't believe I didn't know it. So it's like it's very fascinating just learning in general.
No, you can go.
You sure?
Yeah.
All right. So, one of the laws that specifically surprised me was when I was a level 2 and we were doing the car stops. We were practicing that. Is that Mr. Reed was teaching us how like officers, like if they have something suspicious going on inside the vehicle, like for instance, I heard of a story where a guy was like constantly kicking his feet under the guy in front of him. He was trying to hide a weapon actually, and something like that can estimate like a car search, a vehicle search, and police don't need a warrant, and that's obviously surprising because like a police can't like wait here and then go to the courthouse, wait an hour, get the warrant, because obviously the person would be gone. They just do a car search for safety purposes, and that was like one of the things that like kind of surprised me, is because like how little they need to search your vehicle, and it makes sense because it's for the safety of the public and the safety of the officer, because like I'm like looking at it like that, like if you have nothing to be like hiding, then they shouldn't be really scared of like a car search or something like that. And it's just one of those laws that kind of surprises me. A little thing can help search their car, but it could save people and save a lot of families and stuff like that. Like just something so small like that, like a law like that.
For me, it wasn't really one law in particular. It was kind of the law in general, because I didn't realize how tricky it is. There's a fine line between things you can do and things that you can't do, things that you have a right to, things that you don't have a right to. So it's just kind of like getting to know that fine line is really interesting and really eye-opening in a way. That's really just what surprised me the most about the program.
Thank you. Mr. Domenici?
It's more just a couple of comments. Like, thank all of you. Thank you for coming in here. I love the enthusiasm. Like, you can just, like, I'm energized just thinking about it.
146C, stop on by.
There we go.
Every Tuesday and Friday, it's mock trial, I'm telling you.
I already put the dates in the calendar, so you will see me there. And Mr. Reed, you know, if my memory serves me, and sometimes I question that, you were with me along at Sensata during the visionary sessions for the new high school. And I bring that up because most of what we discussed during those 3 days was what we wanted out of education, how we wanted our education to go, in which direction. You know, project-based learning and you know, coming up with creative ideas and allowing students to empower themselves. And coming in here and getting this overview tonight makes me happy that that's started. You know, it's already started. You know, we're not waiting for a building. This is already happening, and we've seen a lot of it. So this was definitely, this was exciting. I was really looking forward to seeing the presentation tonight. You guys did not disappoint, and, you know, like I said, I'll see you next month.
Again, thank you all for coming. I echo what everyone said. Very impressive presentation and program. Thank you, Mr. Reed. Look forward to hearing more about the program and what you guys have going on the rest of the year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Ms. Larson with our Around Attleboro Public Schools update.
Alright, so for the elementary schools, Willett has a twin day coming up on January 17th. And then at Thatcher, they're going to do Feinstein Friday on February 8th. And so everyone's going to wear their Feinstein t-shirts or lanyards or whatever they have. And then the last two up there, or there should be two up there, they're for everyone. We have a half day on Friday, January 18th, and then no school on Monday. So for the middle schools, there was a DARE graduation recently, so we wanted to congratulate all of the Brennan students who worked hard and got through that program. Aiden and I both graduated from Brennan, and so we were really excited to see that one. On January 18th at Coelho, they're going to have a mock trial assembly with the 7th grade students, and then on the 19th, they're going to have a winter wonderland dance. So that should be fun. At the high school, we finally had our CMAS conference, but I'll talk about that more in a little bit. Today was college day, so all of the staff wore shirts from where they went to, and then students wore shirts where they hoped to go. And we actually wanted to thank Mr. Geddes for coming to speak to the junior class, because someone telling you how to apply to college is really important, so thank you for taking that time. And then we also had mock exams for AP tests this past weekend, which I did last year. And you wake up early on a Saturday and come into school and take your practice test, which isn't very fun in the moment, but when you go to take the real test in May, it helps out a lot, and you're just so much better prepared because you already know what it's going to look like and how much time you have for everything. So it's very beneficial. But for community engagement, we have a couple events coming up. The first is Mr. HS, and it's kind of like a pageant talent show mix together. It's going to be on January 31st at 6 p.m. in Bray, and it's one of the last events that the senior class is going to be putting on before we graduate, so everyone's invited. It should be a great show. And then the music department's going to be putting on Legally Blonde April 6th and 7th. So right now they're just building all of their sets and doing all of their rehearsals and things like that. So back to CMASC, it's the Southeastern Massachusetts Association of Student Councils. We had 17 different high schools represented, 40 students from Attleboro, we had representatives from freshman to senior grade levels. And we went to 2 workshops. You learn how to work together as a better student council to improve your school. And then we all ate dinner together. We went to a hypnotist show, and we're all just kind of breathing a sigh of relief because it went off without a hitch and everyone loved it. So now we're looking forward to the spring conference.
Thank you, Ms. Larson. Next, we have our business agenda. Sawyer, Superintendents Report.
Thank you, Chairman Withers. First, I'm somewhat pleased, although silenced by the fact that the committee's comments to Mr. Reed and the students really sort of steal my thunder in terms of an assessment of what we just watched. I really appreciate that the fact that this program really exemplifies what we're trying to do and our vision for what education at Attleboro High School and the Attleboro Public Schools will look like is really what they're about. I think that's great that point is not lost and is so obvious. I would just add by saying that we really believe that the fact that Attleboro High School is a comprehensive high school is one of our greatest strengths and one of our greatest attributes, and we've pushed to include an expansion of 4 programs in that new building, and I think you can see by the presentation tonight that was a commitment by the community that should pay great dividends. Right, this is exactly the kind of learning we want to provide our students, and as you heard, CTE is not the old trade school sort of concept that many people think of their own experience. We have students in our CTE programs who are going off to 4-year colleges and planning to pursue advanced degrees. There's a real range here, and that these experiences are engaging and powerful for our students and help to make the learning experiences that we're providing our students the best they can be. So I really commend the program that Mr. Reed has developed, and I'm proud that we offer that here. Okay, I have a couple updates as part of my report this evening. The first are a couple facilities-related issues. As you all learned today, we had a little bit of excitement at the high school. We had more problems with the smokestack. In fact, we had a sort of an internal collapse, which blocked the exhaust of that smokestack, which led to some fumes that were detectable in certain areas of the building. So we had to move some students out of the way to figure out what the problem was. And then once we determined that it wasn't the boiler that was malfunctioning, we discovered that it was actually the stack itself, which suggests to us that the stack is probably not salvageable based on the condition that we found in there today, and the fact that it had that internal collapse. So we are trying our best to get the contractor out of Boston to come down. In my Friday update, I had talked about the fact that we were waiting till February break. We're no longer doing that. We're going to get them down as quickly as possible. And our hope is that we will be removing that stack altogether and replacing it with something that is much more to scale for what the job is these days. That stack represents oil-fired burners that were the original boilers that were part of that system. They were converted to gas. You do not need that structure anymore. So we can address this, we think, more cheaply by just replacing it and then by trying to fix it. And we'll keep you informed on that process as it becomes more known. But again, we had Attleboro Fire Department in. They did a check, make sure that the air quality was fine, and it is. And we're going to continue to monitor the boilers, which we need to keep running to make sure that there isn't further collapse and another blockage. And hopefully will get us to a place where we can get this replaced very quickly. As I also mentioned on Friday, we had another boiler problem, this time at Coelho. This was the primary boiler. There are two. So the building is currently running on the secondary boiler, which it is designed to be able to run the entire heating system on that secondary boiler. So we're okay, but we do need to retube the first boiler, whatever that means. My understanding is that there are coils within the boiler that the water travels through, and that they have a life expectancy of around 15 years. And given that that boiler was installed in 2003, it's not that outlandish that would be needing a repair at this time. In fact, boiler number 2, which was installed at the same time, has already been replaced. So we did better on boiler 1 than on number 2. So that is work that we are seeking to do as well, and are just running on the secondary boiler in the meantime. That's it for my fun boiler updates. A couple other things I wanted to tell you about. In the last week, I've signed up to participate in 2 different monthly meetings. The first is with the other superintendents of the Hockomock. Scott Holcomb of North Attleboro is leading the charge on that, and this is an opportunity for me to, on a monthly basis, get to talk about superintendent type issues, policies, other procedures and protocols that we're worried about and that other districts are sharing concerns about, and a chance to share perspectives on these issues, and to also collaborate on things like high school start times, right? There's a lot of districts in the Hockomock that are seriously considering pushing back the start of high school, and I think everyone thinks that to do so would be easier to do collectively than each community kind of going it alone. So those are the kinds of things that we'll be talking about. I'll certainly keep you informed of what comes out of those discussions, but the opportunity to collaborate with my peers is something that I value, and I think will bear fruit. The other monthly meeting that I've signed up for is to meet with the mayor on a monthly basis. He and I both believe that we can do all kinds of things to improve communication. We already have met at an ad hoc basis since he was inaugurated, and we certainly email regularly, but we thought a standing meeting would be a good way to make sure that both the schools and the city are aware of each other's concerns and issues, and that we can get ahead of things rather than be reactive. So I'm happy to hear that, and that begins later this week. I wanted to update you on the Mass Community Forum that I attended last week in New Bedford. While that presentation was really designed for Taunton, Fall River, and New Bedford, the presentation was about those three communities specifically. I thought that the opportunity to participate in the panel discussion there was a valuable one, for no other reason to help raise awareness on this issue, because it really, the problem can only be fixed at a state level, and if my presence there could help the people in those communities to understand the problem so that there's more support on a wider level for addressing the funding problem in the state, all the better. I was lucky to be joined by a couple of our elected officials. I was very happy that Mr. Domenici came with us. Well, not came with us, but saw him there, and also Mr. Representative Hawkins was there, who is a ardent supporter of this issue. So it was no surprise that he made the journey. I will report that the data that was in the presentation for those three communities was very similar to our own. It was sort of a validation of our own assessment. The numbers that they were showing up look very familiar to you. The only thing I would comment on is that as the communities got larger, the problem sort of expanded at an exponential scale. So it wasn't a straight, linear equation there. It had a definite curve to it that while the numbers were very similar, the bigger the district, the gaps got wider and wider. So it was sort of like the opposite of an economy of scale. The other thing I would note is that there was real optimism that it's not too late for there to be some help in the FY20 budget process. That even though that's about to begin the end of this month with the governor's budget being released, there was a lot of feeling that there's real seriousness up at the State House to address this, and that perhaps the first steps of that could be in this FY20 budget. But if not, there is still hope that this is something that's going to get taken care of sooner than later. So I don't know if that optimism is well placed or not, but this is the first time I've been in settings like that where there was an expression of cause for hope. So hopefully that means there'll be deliverance on that.
Mr. Geddes?
So was that cause of optimism from state delegation that was there, Rep. Hawkins and any other reps, or was it from something Governor Baker had said?
Yeah, it was more the superintendents and the Superintendents Association representatives, and people sort of reading the tea leaves based on things they're hearing from the power brokers up at the state. So nothing you can really point to and say, that's why we should feel good about it. But the article that I shared in my update, and that we also shared on Facebook from the Globe, I mean, those kinds of stories weren't happening before. So we think there's an indication that at least there's an awareness that this is something that's going to have to be taken care of, even if there are real concerns about how to do so, and whose version of the fix will be the one that prevails.
Excellent. Thank you.
My last comment on this is that the MTA will be holding a community conversation here in Attleboro on this very same issue on January 30th at 5 o'clock in the auditorium. So anyone that missed that and would like to hear a different take on it, but basically a very similar message, this will be an excellent opportunity for that. Finally, just as has already been covered, we have early release day on Friday. This allows us to provide our targeted professional development for teachers, which is building-based and has a focus on performance assessments. So this is an important part of our PD plan each year, and this day will be the first day of that shift to targeted. Also, we have no school on Monday, in observance of the holiday, and for anyone paying attention to the forecast, I'm very glad that we'll have that extra day buffer, because there's a chance that we'll be using that day to dig out. So that's it for my Updates?
Well, I do. I just was trying to find the break in the
Sure.
before the MSBA. Obviously, I'm not going to regurgitate like what he just talked about at Mass. It was definitely an interesting forum, to say the least. My interest peaked up about the idea of the Hockomock superintendents all getting together to look at things, I guess, holistically. So my thoughts or questions or maybe suggestions, I think I've probably asked you about joint purchase and joint venture opportunities over time. So I would wonder if things like that could potentially be a topic of discussion, especially considering where things may or may not go and how long it may take to get there for the state to adjust and really help every community out, where the cities and towns are doing everything that they can. Here in Attleboro, we got a decent bump from the city. I don't anticipate that always being the case because it came with other departments staying flat. So I know the city will continue to do what they can. So my thoughts were, potentially there could be opportunities for all the other school communities to potentially look inward with one another to see if there are ways where they can be efficient, especially with budgets being so tight.
Yeah, the short answer is yes. I do think that opportunity exists here, but I also think that we got a little bit of work to do for that group to become a functioning group that people are willing to go out on a limb on ideas. I think we have to start small and build some trust. But yes, lots of opportunities inherent in this chance.
Thank you.
Mr. Quinn?
I actually think, what's interesting too, if not for the joint purchases, the state bid contract does take a lot of those big purchases or you would give those savings off the table. But I do think where it also comes in is just shared knowledge of what everybody's paying for different services, right? So that way, even if it's not an opportunity to consolidate, when you're going out to purchase these items, particularly let's just take technology for the sake of example, if you're not going through that state bid list, you know what everybody else is paying either on repairs or on, what's the discount coming from the different vendor. So that knowledge piece too, particularly when it comes to financials, is another added benefit, even if there's not that necessarily that timing alignment that comes with it. So, and the other piece of it, Assistant Superintendent Regan, do you have a group that you can go to? Because I know for assistant superintendents, that's also critical as well.
I do. I'm in my second year of the Assistant Superintendent Leadership Seminar, and we frequently reach out to each other for problems of practice and talk to each other about different initiatives we have in each other's districts and talk through some issues that might come up.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, so at this time, we'd like to switch over to our progress report on the strategic plan, which it's hard to believe. I'll be telling you that this is our last progress report for our strategic plan. So it's really hard to take in how long we've been at this and how much we've accomplished. But without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Regan to run you through where we are today.
Thank you. All right. So reflecting on where this all started with our essential beliefs, which would then supported our purpose or our mission to engage, challenge, inspire all students to maximize their potential and improve our world. The overarching goals were then built based upon our mission, reaching out to our vision to be the center of our community united around education. And I think this evening with Mr. Reed's presentation, you can see how we, strive to do that in all areas and all aspects of the work that we do. Here's a snapshot of all of the information that's included within the strategic plan. The two initiatives down there at the bottom that I think we've spent the most time on specifically are the refined conditions for learning, specifically with our focus on inclusive practices as well as our participation in the Excel network through the Rennie Center for Social Emotional Learning, as well as upgraded technological resources with the rollout of our technology feasibility plan with the one-to-one initiative we have set up for next year. And so for goal 1 with our guided planning, we have partnered with Hanover Digital Research to evaluate our professional development plan. And as part of that project, they have sent out a survey to all of the educators and staff in the district. And with that plan, and the results of the survey, we found that 70% of staff are satisfied with the new structure, the way that we do professional development. 80% of them agree that the pathways facilitate collaboration and positively impact instructional practices. The one thing that they did wish for is that there were more pathways and that they had more choice, but they did like the structure that was presented to them. The instructional technology plan is in its final phase and will be presented to the Teaching and Learning Subcommittee on February 5th. The Teaching, Learning, and Subcommittee has also developed a survey for families that's requesting information about their preference for special subjects. With your approval this evening, we will be sending out this survey to families by the end of this month. We also explored our options for different platforms to hold our MyCap, or our individual learning plan, or as the state likes to call it now, MyCap, My Career and Academic Plan. And we've decided that Naviance will be holding it, and we are working on ways to increase our parental involvement in the creation of those plans and getting them to be able to use Naviance as a tool to support their students' planning and for college or career. And we also reached out to Hanover for this project as well and learned that many districts are using tools like Naviance, and they're also using advisory as a way to support that planning. And we are moving towards using our advisory in that way as well. Finally, grade 8 this year, we started to have them complete an interest survey. It was called Career Key, and the guidance counselors and the team at the high school will be going back down to the middle school to meet with grade 8 students to start planning for their courses for next year. So we've put together quite a strong transition plan for grade 8 to 9 when they come to the high school. Goal 2, quality learning. The instructional technology feasibility plan was presented this past winter with the one-to-one technology and rollout. We do have quite a bit of work to do still within that, looking at our policies and our current practices for technology and also preparing for professional development in this area. This year, the administrative leadership team has focused on inclusive practices. They're all participating in the inclusive practices course that's been put out by the Massachusetts Department of Education. And we're also participating in the Excel network, as I mentioned earlier before, with the Rennie Center. Our goals within that plan are to increase our use of the social emotional curriculum that we have, and also to determine an assessment that we want for social emotional learning. And then finally, with the, luckily we were able to receive the grant for the ST Math program. We are implementing it in 5 of our elementary schools across the district. We continue to receive professional development for our educators, and we're starting to look at some of the data that ST Math is producing. So I think that's been quite an accomplishment to put that in all of our schools at the elementary level. For goal 3, community engagement. As many of you know, Be Heard continues to be our main vehicle to support community engagement. We are implementing the plan. As you heard earlier, Mr. Reed was working with members of one of our groups to think about our discipline and our discipline philosophy and working towards the use of restorative practices. We have also had students complete a school climate survey last spring. We're still continuing to look at the data. Recently, students also participated in focus groups where they had the opportunity to comment on some of the data that was presented. We're also reaching out to the community to participate in community circles to learn how we can increase their ability to engage with the schools and our ability to engage with the community. We are also lucky to have made a connection with Reverend Harris. She's providing professional development for us on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and continues to work with us on Be Heard. And so we're lucky to have that partnership. As you heard tonight, we continue to enjoy support for experiential learning from many, many organizations within the Attleboro community. And as Mr. Reed mentioned tonight, the Attleboro Police Department is one of those organizations that supports us greatly, especially with the students that were able to come here for the safety drills that we had during the month of December. And I think I would be remiss if I didn't thank all of the organizations within the Attleboro community that have supported us, including the library, the Y, Bristol Community College with the support of our new ACRE program, the Literacy Center, Sensata Technologies, and I'm sure I'm missing someone along the way, but thank you for your continued support. Our students enjoy it, and I think there's benefits to both sides. Finally, we are in our initial phases of our communication plan. We are about to release the second edition of our quarterly bulletin. It should be out by the end of this week, sharing information about initiatives that we have going on in the district, including pictures, media, and just keeping everyone abreast of all of the work that our students are doing and our teachers are doing to promote growth and learning across the district. Finally, if you haven't heard, we have a podcast. It's called APS Soup to Nuts. Superintendent Sawyer is leading that charge, and we are still building the podcast, and we hope to continue to use it as a communication tool going forward. And so our next steps and the ongoing work that we have for guided planning, we are looking at our schedules at the high school, middle school, and elementary level, just to make sure that we're reflecting on current schedules that we have and seeing if there's anything that we could do that would benefit our students and educators. The district safety plan, being headed up by Ms. Julianne Singer, is working to support the professional development for ALICE training, and they're working together to create a schedule for that for next year. We continue to work on the grade span reconfiguration recommendation. We'll be sharing that with our educators soon. And as I mentioned earlier this evening, we are planning on looking at our policies and our procedures and professional development for the one-to-one rollout moving forward. That's a pretty big undertaking to make sure everyone's prepared for that. And we will continue to work on expanding our dual enrollment opportunities. Right now at the high school, we have one class that will be starting at the end of the month, and we are looking forward to learning about all of the things that we can improve and continue to build that program at the high school.
So, as the plan had set out, however many years ago, we are in year 4, and we've completed progress report number 6. So the next stage is to complete an evaluation of the strategic plan, an honest assessment of what was what was accomplished, what is in progress, and what was not addressed. And that information will be very helpful in deciding what the next strategic plan should look like, because of the things that are in progress or were not addressed, we needed to make decisions about whether or not we still value these things and we need to continue to pursue them, or whether with a couple years distance we look back and say, yeah, no, things have changed and perhaps that's not the best use of our time. And so to be able to make those kinds of important decisions, we need to have an honest assessment of what it is that we did. The first step in the creation of a new strategic plan, which is the activity of the 5th year, and I should say that while that's the major focus of that year, there is that ongoing work that we will continue whittling away at, and that was always how the plan was designed. The first thing we're going to do is assess what we refer to as our tenets, Those are our essential beliefs. That's our mission. That's our vision. Do these statements still represent what we believe? Do we have any revisions that we need to make based on the way the world looks today and things that we've learned along the way? So we need to sort of do a little bit of that soul searching about who we are, what we value, and what we're trying to accomplish, and perhaps we'll just re-embrace what we have, or perhaps we'll make some revisions, or conceivably we could say, nope, that was all wrong, and start over again. Although I don't really anticipate that outcome. But again, a group of people are going to need to sit down and look through all that and make recommendations. And then once we have the tenets in place, we'll go through and create a new plan, set new goals, and chart the course for the next 5 years. And that's something that we'll be doing next year. So the committee obviously will be very much involved in that process, and we'll need to outline just exactly how we're going to accomplish that. So that's work that's coming in the near future.
Mr. Geddes, you have a question?
You mentioned the self-evaluation. Is there anything initially that, when you look back at what was part of the plan back in 2015, is there anything that you can think of now that we've kind of come up short on, or that you would have liked to have seen more effort in? I know we've got the formal evaluation coming up, but just on the surface,
You want a preview?
Yeah. Way to put it.
Well, I mean, the short answer is yes. There are things that we haven't gotten to. Put me on the spot to think of a good one.
Thinking the CTE programs and the evening programs.
Oh yeah, so adult basic ed.
Mhm.
That's a very good. Thank you, Mr. The plan is there's a number of them. Things that I think we could say, yep, that's a good idea, but we have not gotten to them, and we need to again sort of get to the bottom of what that's about and make some decisions about what we're going to do moving forward.
Because the reason I asked was when I saw the 10 initiatives, one of them was, I believe it was expanded guidance services. And that's something that I think we all feel passionately about. And while we have more tools for guided planning, my first thought in seeing that is, gosh, I wish we could have gotten more guidance staff in the middle. And I think that's a shared belief on your end as well. So even some of those things that we started to make progress on but couldn't get as far as we wanted. Yep. Thank you.
Mr. Quinn?
Just to follow up on Mr. Geddes' point, I think one of the things that I'll be curious to see is, to your point, Superintendent Sawyer, what we choose to change and what we choose to keep. My inclination, just speaking from my vantage point, is that this, while it was set out at 5 years, this was really probably a 10 to 15 year endeavor, and would be concerned if our mission and vision deviates significantly within the next 18 months or so. I'm also, I think that there are some things that we've hit. I'm cautious to declare victory too early on some of these. Particularly, we're still working on the let's just take the individualized learning plans. That's something that's going to take a while just to get our hands around it, never mind implement it and tweak it. To that point, I wonder if I'm just floating this, as we're thinking about the next strategic plan, if we want to think of more of a living plan rather than like a 5-year arbitrary. I think this is very static, but doesn't necessarily reflect the nature of any sort of evolving kind of complex ecosystem.
So, as I've reported out throughout the experience, I participate in the new superintendent induction program that's offered by the state in conjunction with the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents. And, funny enough, they really have a bias against strategic planning, kind of for the reason that you're talking about. And they prefer or advocate for having a district strategy, not a strategic plan. And that's a distinction that we can get into in a little bit greater depth as we decide what our next plan will look like. Because I will tell you this, I agree with you. I don't think we're going to make wholesale changes to either what we claim we're about or what direction we want to go in. again, it's presumptuous to say these things until we go through the evaluation, but I think we've made real progress and have a lot to feel really good about as a district. And I think that we're beginning to really develop some momentum in the directions that we're trying to go. And so while I do think that certainly on the edges there are some things that we could talk about, I think on the whole we're heading in the right direction and should think about how to go that way. But that all being said, I think Ms. Regan and I would both tell you that we'd go about how we put together a 5-year strategy differently based on the experience of living with the one we created 5 years ago. And while I would say it was largely positive because we've accomplished all these great things, yeah, there have been lessons learned, and we've both received training since, and I think we have a more nuanced idea of what we should be doing, and greater flexibility is certainly a big piece of that.
And just one final point, I think one of the many things I respect about this administrative team and just the district as a whole is the forward thinking, the ability to see the whole board play the long game, so I'm not concerned. I think my comments more in general are to the nature of education, which tends to get caught in large pendulum swings. And while I don't think it's going to be the case here, I just think it's worth noting that we seem to be on a good trajectory, and that sustained excellence is continuing on a progress.
Yeah, I mean, you won't find the term social emotional learning in the strategic plan, right? That wasn't jargon that was, employed in 2015. So, we've done, I think, our best to show how this thing that, people weren't talking about when we made this plan does fit into what the plan was about. There are ways to write the plan that's better able to make those adaptations.
Anything else? Any other questions?
Okay, so finally, on the project update, my only real update is that the representatives from MSBA will be coming down to meet with the design team later in the month to review the submission that we made. I don't know exactly the date of that submission, but it was, I think, in December. Back in the fall. So I'm not sure what that meeting's really about, but I believe that's a chance for them to meet and understand the work that's been done. So that's going to be a significant moment.
Thank you. That it for your report?
That is it for my report. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The only other item on the business agenda, briefly, and it dovetails back into something the superintendent was talking about, is the Massachusetts Education Promise Act, which is a new proposed act that's been discussed a lot, that looks like it's going to be taken up by the legislature this year. Just wanted to put it on everyone's radar as something to follow and to do what we can to advocate for. It's looking into essentially addressing many of these problems with the foundation formula that we've been talking about here in Attleboro for many years, and that the state tried to take up last year and ended up not passing anything, but they are hopeful, and there seems to be a lot of momentum, as was, I think, referred to earlier, that something will get passed this year. Certainly wouldn't be an immediate cure-all, but it would, it would get us on the road to where we need to go, because as we've said, before, while there are a lot of things we have done and can continue to try and do, we're not going to bridge this gap without the state. So, this would be really huge for Attleboro and other similar districts if this were to pass. So I wanted to put that up on everyone's radar. I know, Mr. Quinn, I think you said you had a comment about it as well.
Yeah, I think, as we did 2 years ago, we should consider very strongly drafting and then supporting a resolution to our delegation in support of either the Promise Act in its entirety or some sort of revised version. If you get wonky and dive into the FBRC, so Foundation Budget Review Commission recommendations, there's about 4 different models that are proposed. The biggest difference between the groups is whether or not the low income piece is included. Model 2 has the adjustments for special education, the adjustments for health insurance, the adjustments for special education. It doesn't have the adjustment for low income. Model 4 has that plus something with the contingency for some of the other kind of more urban districts that have higher charter school, what happens right now is that they give you your aid, and then whatever your charter school enrollment is deducted from Chapter 70. There's a new provision now that at least 17 and a half, every town is guaranteed at least 17.5% of their foundation budget is going to be provided by the state. I think cities like Boston, that would get chewed up by charter schools. So the fix to get them on board was to get that 17.5 after charter school distribution. But I think to give us kind of a context, going through some of the Mass Superintendent presentations, Leominster, which I know has been used as our comp, not necessarily. I like to think of us more like towards a Westfield, but Leominster is like a very similar district, was looking at about $7 million in additional revenue through this Model 4, which is built into the Promise Act. While that doesn't give us to the 10 that we need, I think it's a huge step forward, and it's only going to happen if we collectively, I know as a body we're all on board, but we're also working with some of our local school committees to advocate for this. I think one more thing that we need to be mindful of too is that, as Superintendent Sawyer said, there's this consensus that something needs to be done, but amongst some of the more reluctant folks, they're advocating, we can give this money, but they're going to be, let's put it towards innovation or things that we think work. I think it's really important to point out that this Foundation Budget Review Commission is making us whole based on not keeping up with the expenses and the costs. So adding additional strings and additional requirements when the state has not kept up with the finances promised under the ignition requirements, I think is really critical that this is not being made whole. This is not something above and beyond, but this is to fulfill the state's end of the bargain. So I think we need to be clear that this should come with as few strings attached. I'm not opposed to an innovation fund, but let's make sure that the state is keeping up its end of the bargain first. So.
Mr. Geddes?
To that point, Mr. Sawyer, you mentioned that the presentation you attended included Fall River, New Bedford, and Taunton, which obviously are the 4 largest districts in southeastern Massachusetts. Do you think it would be more beneficial to come up with a joint resolution across other districts? As should we take the lead as southeastern Massachusetts' largest districts to say we wholeheartedly support this act, or?
So the MTA did present a proposed resolution last week, and there were a couple things in there that needed to be changed. So I sent it back, and then when those get changed, the plan was to bring it to the school committee to endorse it.
Okay.
Hopefully the next meeting. So there's a uniform resolution.
Okay.
With a few tweaks for each specific district that's being circulated.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mr. Storrs?
As part of that, are they recommending which model as the ones that were mentioned, or are they being more generic?
It's generic.
Okay.
I do think Mr. Chair, if I may, the one thing I've been cautioned by MASC, and I don't know if Mr. Furtado could help us with this, or who I need to speak to, is that before we endorse anything, we need to make sure we know which model works best from us. I would think that 4 would work well because we have such a significant portion of low income compared to some of our surrounding communities. But I can't say with absolute certainty which one benefits us. I know the difference in terms of the models when you look at 2, which doesn't include low income, and it's a pretty significant jump. In some instances, the funding levels has doubled. But if you're in a more affluent community, that may not shift things too much. So it's something we really need to do a deeper dive on.
So more to come on this in the coming meetings, and like I said, when there's a resolution ready to be considered, I'll send it along hopefully before our next meeting. And that will conclude the business agenda portion of the meeting tonight. Next, we have approval of minutes from our December 10th, 2018 and December 19th, 2018 meetings. The minutes were circulated with your materials. Do you have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or changes? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Next, consent agenda. Item number 1, motion to accept a donation in the amount of $150 from Attleboro, from attorney James Caramanica to the AHS mock trial team.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept a donation in the amount of $150 from Boston University to the AHS 12+ program.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept a donation in the amount of $250 from Paul Pascarose to the AHS boys basketball team.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept a donation of $100 from Casey Law Offices to the Attleboro High School mock trial team.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept a donation in the amount of $4,510 from the Quello Middle School PTO for educational purposes.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept a donation in the amount of $500 from Joan Apgar to Hill Roberts for the library.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Pursuant to Chestnut Hill Studio Limited 2017 to 2020 contract, motion to accept $1,777. That fulfills their contractual obligation to be used directly to benefit students of the high school, broken down as set forth in the memorandum dated January 12, 2019.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Pursuant to the 2017-2018 Life Touch contract subsection 12, motion to approve $14,078.89 to directly benefit the students of the schools as broken down in the memorandum dated January 11, 2019.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve an overnight international field trip proposal for 20 grade 9 through 12 AHS students to attend the National High School Cheerleading Championship in March 13th through 18th, 2019.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve a day field trip proposal for 130 Brennan Middle School students to attend Canopy Lake Park on June 7th, 2019.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve an overnight international field trip proposal for 93 grade 8 students to attend Washington, D.C. on May 30th, 2020.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that concludes the consent agenda. Thank you. Moving on to our subcommittee reports. Start with policy and personnel. Ms. Scales?
To start, please note that the tabled policies from the December 3rd meeting will be removed and go into immediate effect. We began our meeting by reviewing items in Section A that we were cited on in the last DESI tier-focused monitoring review. The items were reviewed by our legal counsel. The subcommittee questioned the reasoning of merging some of the items, so they were tabled for further review. We made minor edits to policy AC, non-discrimination, to include pregnancy or pregnancy-related conditions as well as homeless status. A motion to approve the edits to policy AC.
So moved.
Comments? Just one comment is that we will need to revisit this policy in the future, as legal counsel is going to look at it again. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next, we tabled AC, non-discrimination on the basis of sex, and ACAB, sexual and gender-based harassment, for further review. In keeping with our cleaning up of the policy book, we are looking to remove policy exhibits ACAB E1, which is non-discrimination anti-harassment procedures, and ACAB E2, which is the report form for reports or complaints of discrimination harassment. So a motion to remove ACAB E1 and E2.
So moved.
The administration will make the report available on our website. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. There are no edits to ACE non-discrimination on the basis of disability, but while reviewing the policy, we did notice that the mask revised date was incorrect. So a motion to approve ACE as edited.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Also, with policy ADD background checks, we didn't make any changes, but noticed a typo in the second paragraph. So a motion to approve the edits to ADDA.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. ADDA R1 is the DCJIS Model Quarry Policy Regulation. There are no changes or edits, so a motion to note the review date.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Policy JB, Equal Educational Opportunities, had homeless status and pregnancy-related condition added to the protected classes. A motion to approve policy JB as presented.
So moved. Second.
Just one comment is that we have asked the administration to look into legal counsel's suggestion of adding ELL to the policy, and they will get back to us. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next, legal counsel review JICFB anti-bullying. While we did not make all the suggested edits that they proposed, we did change the title to bullying prevention, removed the 14 days for investigation stipulation, and changed counseling referral to target assistance. Motion to approve JICFB as edited.
So moved.
All in favor?
Second.
Aye. Thank you. Motion passes. We are looking to remove policy exhibit JICFBE1 from the policy binder, as this can be found on the website. So a motion to remove JICFBE1.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next, we continued our review of Section K. These items were previously tabled. The administration was looking to note the review date on KFA, commercial activity on school property, but upon review, the subcommittee has agreed to remove it from the policy binder, as Mass does not have this policy. A motion to remove KFAA.
So moved. Second.
We have, we have asked administration to review Mass Policy KHA, which covers public solicitations in the school as a replacement. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Upon reviewing KI school visitor and KIB school visitor observation, the subcommittee noticed that Mass did not have a KIB, but did have an IHBAA, observations of special education programs. Therefore, we made minor edits to the Mass version of that to better align with the district. The motion is to approve the IHBAA as presented.
Second.
Comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. After reviewing policy KI school visitor, we made minor edits to include the cross-references listed. Motion to approve KI as presented.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. As was previously mentioned, there is no Mass Policy KIB, and the just approved IHBAA covers the items in it, so we are removing from the policy binder. Motion to remove KIB from the policy binder.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Along with that, we are removing the exhibit that goes along with it. Motion to remove KIB E1 School Visitor Observation Request Form from the policy binder.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Lastly, we will bring forward 4 job descriptions that have all been vetted through the lab. Motion to approve the career and technical education teacher job description.
So moved. Second.
Questions? Yes, sir?
A general question as I was looking at the CTE high school and middle school job descriptions. I had 2 questions. One, none of them seem to be very content focused. So at a lot of those levels, you know, are we looking for a CTE teacher, or are we looking for a CTE teacher for automotive program? So I didn't know if there was a rationale for not including the content in the job description.
So we, in job descriptions, the general rule is to keep them very general so that they can meet the needs of different groups of teachers within a particular level or a particular program, and so that was the rationale behind that.
And the other question I had with it's more for the high school and middle school, well, for all of high school, elementary, and middle. Minimum of bachelor's degree and appropriate Massachusetts teacher's licensure. Is there in my field, there's usually bachelor's required, master's preferred, or something along those lines. Is that something, I know this is already run through the lab, but is that something worth putting in, or is that just generally understood that we would prefer teachers with masters, or?
I think when we have the posting available, that's when we have the opportunity to become more specific based upon the specific position that we want. So that's why we like to keep the descriptions very general, and then if we need to get more specific in the posting, we would do it in there.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion was that, that was just CTE. Motion to approve the high school teacher job description as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Motion to approve the middle school teacher job description.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. And motion to approve the elementary school job description as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We wanted to thank the head of Human Resources Department for keeping their word and making sure that all the job descriptions in the district are reviewed and updated, as this has not happened in a while, so thank you. Our next meeting will be held on January 4th, and that is my report.
Thank you, Mrs. Scales.
You're welcome.
Finance and budget, Mr. Domenici, I believe you're gonna
Yeah,
take the reins.
with probably a little assistance from Mr. Furtado, who's made his way forward. So we met last week, and, you know, by and large, and I'll sum, and you can jump in where I maybe missed a gap. We are about where we expected to be with the budget to date thus far. There are a few watch items that Mark has been keeping us informed on. Overall, there is one item we will discuss more specifically. But as of right now, it's looking very similar to last year, where it's gonna, you know, we'll be very close with very little carryover. But that's, you know, what we've been dealing with throughout the year. There is one motion that has come out. That was the license agreement with Bishop Fien to use the pool for this year. And I think the contract has the option at our discretion to extend another 2 years. So I will entertain this motion to approve the contract with Bishop Fien High School to use the pool for the fee of $7,500 for fiscal year 19.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good. The item in the room, of course, we've had some pretty good discussion about the special education gap, and just to sum up when I say that, last year's budget, I think we believe we spent about $3.1 million in special education services, and for this current fiscal year, we actually forecasted 3.8 with capacity to pay potentially by some movement up to about $4 million, which is about a 29% increase in services last year. And as you know, which is significant, but unfortunately not enough, because due to some late summer placements, our number is about 300,000 over that, so about 4.3, which is about a 42% bump from last year alone in special education services. I know Mr. Furtado, Mr. Sawyer, and the like have met, and Chairman Withers, I believe, with the city administration to kind of work on what the plan is. And the city has made some funding available in the event that we need it. Mr. Furtado had mentioned the strong desire, as much as possible, to try to find that difference within the current school budget. And there are some options that were listed out in our meeting last week. We're not entertaining any motions tonight, but we wanted to bring them to the forefront. Mark kind of gave us 5 areas where he felt that this could be helpful to kind of keep expenses down and to potentially help bridge that gap as much as possible. They were provided in the packet. I'll just list them out very quickly, and then, you know, if Mr. Furtado was here to kind of add a little bit more color to it. And we wanted to make sure that the rest of the committee had an opportunity to look at these items, potentially digest. These are suggestions, not necessarily, you know, we might decide that they're all things we should do, and there might be reasons to maybe not go down a particular path. So first item up, freezing overtime for maintenance and custodians. Second item, to limit the third trimester after-school activities at the middle schools to 1 day a week. That's just the activities portion. That does not cover the academic support. That would not be touched in this potential scenario. Obviously, besides the stipends, that would also potentially be some savings with transportation costs. There is a $20,000 discretionary funds, which we would entertain not spending, to not complete some of the non-essential maintenance projects that are planned. And, you know, Mr. Furtado, I know you mentioned a couple of them during our meeting last week. And obviously, the other one's a little high level, but to keep a sharp eye on hiring staff. We definitely had some conversations about, you know, where things could potentially be covered
You know, if folks are out for, you know, limited amounts of times, discussions with the associations, of course, to pursue, you know, whether or not there are opportunities maybe to, you know, if somebody's out half a day to cover within the existing staff, versus, you know, maybe bringing in, substitute, try to use the substitute budget for, you know, where we absolutely need it, as opposed to, you know, circumstances like that. So these are items that were kind of brought forth last week. We thought as a subcommittee that these should be put out to the open for all of us to have a little discussion about. And, you know, Mr. Furtado, I don't know if I maybe missed a couple things.
Those were the items we can safely say that we would expect about $100,000 in savings from those things. However, we also discussed the fact that things like snowstorms, which the superintendent has already alluded to, could impact our ability there with the overtime with our maintenance and custodial staff. And as the superintendent started off with tonight, we're experiencing enough problems with capital to not even really have an opportunity to consider non-essential projects, given the pace and volume that we're experiencing at this point.
Mrs. Gills?
Given the fragile nature of our budget, items such as, you know, the septic over at Hill Roberts that we took care of, the boiler situation at, I don't know wherever it was, Quello, that we took care of. We've asked for assistance from the city.
We have formally requested for the pumps at Hill Roberts. We haven't done the work at Coelho yet. That breakdown occurred last week, so we will, once we complete that project, and that's expected to be about $15,000, which by all definition is a capital expense. We will request funding for that, and anything associated with the stack, which right now at a minimum is about $25,000, we will be requesting.
And so the pumps at Hill Roberts, and work was done when?
Probably 2 months ago now.
Okay, and we haven't heard, on our request, we haven't heard from city.
Correct.
On help with that. So, that's just discouraging to me, that, you know, we're given the fragile nature of our budget, that capital expenses like that, that are a safety issue, I would consider all of those major safety issues for our children, are not being addressed yet on the city side. That's all I want to say.
When you are putting, what's the amount that right now we expect to be short, budget-wise, due to the special ed tuition?
So the tuitions are running about $400,000 higher than we have the budgetary capacity to address. But we, you know, as this committee knows, we do get to a point at the end of the year where things have or have not happened, and you know, have some amount of carryover typically at the end of the year. It would be hard to imagine us having that level at year's end, but it's not impossible. Certainly the weather for the coming weekend isn't going to help, but we've had a very good year with utilities. We've taken some steps there already to kind of amplify that a little bit. And in the big wild card now, in terms of where we could potentially enjoy some significant dollars, would be with substitutes. And so, you know, the superintendent has initiated discussions with the unions to talk about absence from work, and we'll see how that plays out. Again, that's not something we're going to know until June. The reason we brought this to the attention of the school committee and the city in October was because the magnitude was so significant that it was unlikely but not impossible for us to address it. And it, you know, again, we didn't want to be irresponsible and come to the city in June and say we need a check. So
couple of the items. So when you say freeze overtime for maintenance custodians, what impact will that have on the schools by doing that?
Some of the, that's a great question. Some of, as the committee knows, we've switched things around a little bit in terms of the make-buy with our grounds vendor, our landscaping company. But there are times, especially at the end of the year, at graduation time and things like that, where you come to our buildings and you say, hey, wait a minute, it really looks good. And that's the work of our custodians and our maintenance people. We'll probably not see that particular shine at certain times of the year this year. We haven't and don't expect to see any degradation within the buildings. I think the buildings are going to maintain their condition that we frequently get, kudos for. But there'll be a lot of little things, much like the maintenance projects, where some doors may not be painted when they should be, or that sort of thing. It's an accumulation of a lot of little things like that will end up being reflected at the end of the year that we haven't been able to address.
Along those lines, you mentioned the maintenance projects a couple of times. Were any of the maintenance projects that were anticipated energy related, in that they could have saved? Because I know when we're looking at capital improvements, we're always trying to focus on the ones that can save us money annually.
Yeah.
Throwing $400,000 into a boiler can save us tens of thousands during the year, each year.
Yeah.
So that pays for itself pretty quickly. Are any of those being sacrificed in?
No, the energy efficiency projects, which typically come through the utilities, those have dried up to a great degree. We're more focused lately on some safety concerns we have, and particularly with traffic patterns. So one of the big things we had hoped to accomplish that we're not going to because of this is the reconfiguration over at Thatcher, where we were going to add some parking in what is essentially now the back of the building, and reconfigure things to have a more safe traffic flow, especially through the neighborhoods, and kind of take some of the pressure off the parking. That seems to be kind of a neighborhood issue there, and so we aren't going to be able to get that accomplished this fiscal year. It's things like that. We're still started some small steps at Willett, and we're going to try to do some small steps at Quello as well. But the kind of structural stuff that we need to do to make things better, we won't be able to accomplish.
Mr. Quinn?
Just for my own background, how often do these after-school activities currently run during
2 to 3 nights a week.
And I guess I would suggest that, or at least let the committee consider potentially providing a fee for service rather than losing them in their entirety, unless there's some sort of grant or some sort of reason that we're not providing that option in order to keep them at full strength.
Those programs, the reason they were on the list is they actually, as Scott had pointed out, they would have sort of a double impact. The operating budget, that number's around $20,000. We didn't call for an elimination. It was a reduction. So they'll go 2/3 of the year full bore, and then reduce. Again, it's to the committee, for the committee to decide. Reduce to rather than 2 or 3 days a week, it would be 1. With the stipulation that the academic support programs not be altered. So what that'll do is again return about $20,000 in operating, and then also have an impact on transportation, because all of the students that we've talked about in terms of the tuition problem are all transported students to out-of-district placements, which also kind of blew that budget up. So.
I would be curious, and I don't know if I'm the only one on this, but I would like to see what the option would be, or what the cost would be to parents to keep it open for the full duration.
Well, how much would the savings be anyway? Is the $20,000 the cost of the program, or is that the cost of the savings? that we would?
That's the value of the money that wouldn't be spent going from 3 days to 1 in the operating budget.
For
There'd
the
be
rest of the
another,
year?
right, at the end of trimester 2, which is, I think, in February, or March. But there'd also be another 4,000 or so in transportation costs.
Yeah, just kind of estimate what the cost per pupil is for participants, and then considering some sort of melt or adjustments for kids who are on free or reduced lunch. I'd just like to see, at least internally, what those cost projections would be to keep them up and running before we go to the program in its entirety. Well, not in its entirety. I appreciate what the finance committee. I appreciate the position. I just would like to know what that option was in case parents wanted their children, for childcare reasons or just for general enjoyment, to have that option.
Mr. Storrs?
How many students on average, take part in these programs?
For each school, the numbers are very close. There's some variability. And it varies. It can vary reasonably from day to day. But on average, it's about 100 to students, 80 to 100, and in Quello's case, maybe up to 120 per day. That translates into about 150 to 170 participants. It's not 300 because a lot of students take it 2 or 3 days a week. And then for Wamsutta and Brennan, again, roughly half the students who are participating take the bus home, and then the other half go walk or get picked up. In Quello's case, it's more about 2/3 take the bus home. They have a higher bus participation.
What would the cost of the bus savings be?
4,000.
About $4,000 or $5,000.
I mean, that to me, that's more symbolic, so that doesn't move the needle for me one way or
Yeah.
another.
The problem with it is that, as you know, the transportation budget is isolated. We can't add money or take money from that. So whatever is lost is lost. It can't be covered by savings in insurance or savings at the sublines, or it's a discrete budget, just like our food service budget is a discrete budget.
So if I understand it right, the 4,000 is from an account that doesn't directly impact our operating budget.
Correct.
Right, it's a separate, that effectively has to get paid.
Right.
So it's really the 20,000 is what we're talking about. The other 20,000 is where the savings that could directly impact the budget is.
Sure, but
Yeah.
I think what Mr. Furtado is trying to say is that
There's no way to rescue transportation.
we have a concern on our transportation lines as well that we haven't highlighted, and finding some savings in transportation would help to create a little bit of a cushion because we can't address it any other way.
Okay.
So part of why this option was pursued was because not only did it help with our operational concerns, but it also helped with our transportation concerns.
So tell me if I'm correct, per, this idea of pay for it, 25,000, give or take, we're talking $250 to cover the entire, which would be, I think, a bit on the high side. To be asking parents to be footing that type of bill for after-school programs, in my opinion. I mean, it doesn't mean that it's not a possibility, but am I correct in my math?
I think it's a little less than that when you account for all 3 middle schools, but
600 students a day, no,
Yeah, he said-
300 students a day.
You said about 100 students total?
it's about
No,
100.
at each middle
No,
school.
Oh, at each.
150 to 170 per school.
Whole,
So if
okay,
you-
that changes everything.
If you use a base of 450 students, it's about $45.
That's much better, okay.
I'm not opposed to the thought, because I know that 2 years ago, when, when there were presentations at all the PTOs about the budget in general, one of the areas that was not up for discussion at the time for, to cut was this program. I don't think that this is something that, my daughter takes it, for example, and, we love it. I think most people would find it a very positive experience. There's a lot of different things that the kids can do, and it keeps the kids in school and active, as opposed to maybe being idle and doing something or getting into things they shouldn't. So, it's not my favorite idea to cut it.
That being said, if we're trying to tighten the belt for this particular year, I wonder if perhaps the idea of fees could be discussed at a future time or at the start of a year so that parents have time to prepare, as opposed to getting hit with, the end of the year and here it is. Maybe some parents would turn around and say, well, then that means I have to find other
Yeah.
arrangements for my child
Yep.
for that day. So yeah, I just assume do it because I have to pay it anyway. I don't know. I don't know. And how quickly do you put it together and get people to think about it?
There's some more context that's important for the committee to consider. First of all, we believe strongly we'll be getting our carryover funds back. That has not happened yet. That's about $80,000. There's undistributed funds, which, as we've gotten into FY19, some portion of our FY18 budget had to be encumbered. We didn't know what the last electric bill was going to be. We didn't know how much a repair project that was underway was going to be, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. As those encumbrances got relieved, that money gets pooled. That is at a value of about $80,000 as well. So, in terms of the rest of the budget is fine. It's not great, but it's fine. It's not something we need to worry about. We need to be concerned about how substitute spending goes through the end of the year, but again, that's not going to pop until June. So we have this $400,000 issue. We feel we'll be getting the funds that typically come back to us. Those, by the way, are reported to the state as expended, so that's why it typically comes back to us, because we identify them as expended funds. So that's 150,000 of the 400. The city very graciously committed to 150,000. So we're almost there, and this is a discussion on that last piece. To commit to hitting the number. I think that we do have some time. Because again, the after-school program's off a third trimester, so that's, we've got a month to kind of chew on that. And the other ones, we're going to be aggressive with that anyway. Again, it's possible to come out of this hole without expending the extra city money, but unlikely.
But that is taking, the carryover funds and the encumbered funds are funds we were expecting to get back anyway, correct?
That
I know we have.
typically have gotten back in the past.
Right.
Yes.
Mr. Geddes?
The other two questions I had, the not spending $20,000 in discretionary funds, that's, I assume that's what's remaining in that budget line. What would
At
that?
the school level, the school supplies and books and.
Okay, so I just want to clarify that it's not like this free cash account that every school has, that it's no slush fund or anything. Okay.
No, unfortunately.
So discretionary funds more being still a tangible effect on teaching and learning.
Yes.
And then the other was the keeping an eye on hiring staff. Is the consideration there delayed hiring for openings, or assessing each position in terms of coverage, or is it
Yes.
we've
all of
got
that.
two great candidates, one falls in this level of the scale, one falls in this level of the scale, and deciding that way, or
It would be all of that. We have things that, again, sometimes very small dollars, but that we have to be careful with. And then, as you said, we have to make some hard choices about where we are, what the candidates are. Sometimes we get pools that we're really not happy with, and do we go forward anyway, or do we wait to get somebody we really want? Or, as you just pointed out, a case where we have multiple people that we would love to have, and can make some choices based on cost.
and usually that cost is tied to experience, and so that's another direct impact. So Thank you.
Mrs. Johnson?
So I have more to comments rather than questions. The first regarding limiting the after-school activities at the middle school. I really hope that we sit and reflect on not only the cost of what we're cutting, but the value. We've already had many discussions about at the middle school, if there's any level where we are lacking activities and choices and resources for our students, it's at the middle school level. That would be something that, again, I know that we may need to find dollars. I hope that that's one of the last areas that we need to cut, if we need to cut at all. I'd love to see what other options we might be able to come up with there. And then about the non-essential maintenance, one you had cited was Thatcher, rerouting the traffic pattern, about a safety issue there. And again, just to take make sure we go through that list again, because that traffic pattern is something that families have been advocating for a long time, because there truly is a safety issue with that school having the smallest parking lot, but the greatest amount of students in the building. Well, not the greatest, but there's a large number of students in that building. So again, none of these decisions are going to be easy. I think we all need to stop and reflect upon what this impact is going to be, not only short-term but long-term, before we make these decisions. That's all.
Thanks, Mark, for that. I don't have any other business to bring forth. Our next scheduled meeting is February 6th.
Great. And I assume at the next coming meetings, you'll keep us informed as to what's going on and
Yes.
where we sit and when we need to make decisions. We do. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Scott. Next we have teaching and learning. Mr. Quinn?
Thank you. Not a long agenda, but a pretty dense agenda. First item was a new program at the high school called ACRE, which stands for Attleboro College Readiness Expedition. It's a new program for freshman students. It's been 2 years in the works, working with Joe Amaral, who wanted to start a program that would support students who typically may not get additional support at home, either academic or college planning, that sometimes we just kind of take for granted as part of the process. As Mr. Geddes can probably attest, that it's a more complex process than in past generations, or if you're a first generation student, we get this great guidance department, but there's a lot of stuff that goes on at home. So the ACRE's in a cohort model. 25 students take at least 2 classes together, one of which is advisory, and they are also been going on some college tours. Again, Mr. Geddes was very kind to help facilitate a trip to BCC, with the goal of students who may not have initially considered themselves to be college material, whatever that means, now can kind of see themselves on a campus and then start thinking about, hey, this is possible, and then also have the added support. The plan is to grow it, and hopefully continue with community outreach to find mentors and other support folks who can provide some of those added resources where the gaps where the school can come in. Anything I missed on that? Okay, feel free to jump in. Second item on the agenda was the ELA curriculum adoption process. I think we were really impressed by the comprehensive nature of this adoption that's been in the works for at least a year, if not 2 years, in terms of first, surveying the teachers after Assistant Superintendent Regan found that with the initial curriculum adoption, the teachers weren't part of the discussion. So there was a survey sent out to all of our ELA teachers at the elementary level, and even up until the middle school level as well, up to 6th, to get their insights about what they liked about the current project, which I believe was it Reading Street? Is it Reading Street currently? And then where is it falling short? So at this point, they've gone through kind of an evaluation process. They've narrowed it down to 2 potential vendors, the Reading Wonders and a product called Meaning Making. 24 teachers will begin piloting this program at the different schools, about two to three per grade level. They tried to evenly distribute it. Some will be piloting Wonder, some will be piloting meaning making over the course of the year, and then through the 2019-20 school year, they'll come to a consensus of what's the best direction for the district. Training was going to be starting this spring for those teachers who are piloting. One of the big focuses too, in conjunction with Be Heard, is trying to select 2 vendors that could provide diverse texts in terms of cultural representation, ethnic representation, to be more reflective of the student body, because I think it's critical that students see themselves in the literature that they're reading. So over the next year, the teachers will come together, decide, test it out, talk to each other in a collaborative process. The plan is once it's a product is selected, there'll be a phase-in. If memory serves me, it was beginning in K2.
I think that's still up for discussion.
Oh, still up for,
Yep.
excuse me, still up for discussion, but in order to be as fiscally responsible as possible, it would be a phase structure, but a thoughtful phase structure so there's no kind of gaps in the implementation. So we're really excited to see what comes out of that, and just want to commend Assistant Superintendent Regan in a really thoughtful and inclusive process. Third item was a Generation Citizen pilot. The new Massachusetts frameworks has a heavy emphasis on civic action and developing students' depths of government. I think what's really nice is that this is work that's been going on, at least to my knowledge, in the high school for quite some time. The history department has been doing kind of government inquiry projects for at least the last 3 years. Generation Citizen is a nonprofit organization that provides curricular resources and opportunities to students to not just learn about civics, but actually do civics. They pick a problem of practice, and they investigate the root causes, and then start to speak to local representatives and people in the community who have understanding, and then they ultimately propose a solution. Mr. Domenici raised a really good point in the meeting, and sometimes these organizations come with a particular bias and lens, and I'm pleased to report that Generation Citizen is really about making sure that the students come up with the idea themselves. And I think it's always critical, again, as Mr. Domenici pointed out, that we just be mindful of the organizations that come in, and that we're preventing a thoughtful approach. So we're still investigating what those resources will be from Generation Citizen, but we're piloting it this year at the history department, and we'll be on the lookout for more opportunities for collaboration. And then finally, we have one action item. As part of our strategic plan, one of our action steps was to survey the community to get a better understanding of, number one, the initial satisfaction or levels of satisfaction with our existing specials, but also where do we need to go as, if we're able in the position to add additional teachers, what are those special courses that we're not currently offering? What do we need to bring into the district, or if we need to rethink something, what might that be? So provided in your packet was a draft survey of what we'd like to send out to parents. It's a variable-based survey where, depending on whether or not a parent selects that he or she is a parent of a elementary, middle, high, or multiple grades, it will take them to a specific page that's relevant to their student or their child's makeup. What we would ask now, we would entertain a motion to approve the survey now. It passed in committee for nothing, but I'll entertain a motion to approve the survey.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion, questions on the survey? Mr. Stewart?
Yeah, under the section, please rate this is for the high school level, I think it was, yeah, because there's 9, 10, 11, 12. Please rate your satisfaction with your child's experience in the following electives. And it talked about music, technology, physical education, no problems. I think it should be physical education / health, right? As in every other year, it kind of ping-pongs. Would health be considered a special? I guess it would, because it
Yeah, we can certainly revise the language of the survey to reflect health if it was not included.
But my primary question had to do with CTE being all grouped as a generic, just CTE.
Yep.
When we have so many different CTE programs, I think there could be some value in actually breaking that out and listing each of the individual CTE programs and getting some constructive, hopefully constructive feedback on those specific programs rather than CTEs in general.
So our thought process there, and I think we're open to feedback here, is that if there was an issue, the parent would have the opportunity to expand upon in the open comment section about what said issue was with the program. And that would provide the insight there, rather than making a survey that had, all the CTE options and not and just lengthening the survey. I'm open to suggestion, but I believe that the open response piece would capture it. I'll take feedback on that.
Yeah, because so from my point of view, like my son, he's taking CTE right now. He's in engineering, but he also took other electives that are CTE-related electives, like criminal justice and things of that nature. So it would be very difficult for me to have him, through him, rate CTE generally when he's done multiple programs over the course of his 4 years. But even in his senior year, he's done multiple CTE-related programs at the same time. So. So if engineering was, perfectly exceptional, and the other one was on the other side, how would I would all of a sudden have difficulty do I average it and give them a middle grade when that doesn't really represent? And yeah, you're right. In the comments, I can explain that, but I just, it's that kind of thing.
So would you, and excuse my ignorance on this piece of it, my impression was that the CTE would be exploratory.
That's only 9th grade.
Right, and then you pick a track, or is there multiple, can you take multiple CTE paths along the way?
Well, there's one CTE track, but there's also electives. Is that a fair way to say it? There's a bunch of different electives that you could take that are CTE related, for lack of a better term.
There aren't a lot of other options outside of the programs themselves, and the programs, you're signing up for a 3-year experience, and you're doing level 1, 2, and 3. There are times that we offer what I would call an elective, but there isn't a lot of that.
But I mean, just knowing from what my daughter's taken and what my son has taken, I know that there's ceramics. I know that there's jewelry making. I know, and I could keep going with specials.
Those are special subjects. Yeah,
which are not covered by this, from what I see. Right now, there was only music, technology, physical ed, and CTE.
Yeah, so ceramics would fall under art.
Okay.
And then
and jewelry making, I guess, would also fall under art.
Yeah, that's the departments that they were housed in.
Okay.
So do you think it would be worth noting? So from what the administration's saying, a parent filling the survey out would view CTE as that's the primary CTE program my student is in if they're in an elective, say in criminal justice or electricity or whatever. Do you think it's worth noting that, or do we think that parents would understand that that's implied in the survey?
So, I mean, I looked at this as it's kind of an all-encompassing survey to a degree. You could almost make the case that we could do a CTE survey on its own merits, and maybe that's something to consider, especially given like the presentations and the like tonight. You could even do it as a student survey. But I think we were looking at this one kind of, there's a lot of ground that we're covering. So as a, depending upon, how many, like I've got a kid in middle school, 2 in elementary, some other people may have high school. I don't know how much time folks are going to take to fill out the survey, as thoughtful as a lot of these discussions are. So I think we wanted to try to, it covers a lot of ground, and I want to make sure that people take it, take the time to take the survey. So I don't know. I mean, like I said, maybe CTE could be its own survey in and of itself, and maybe something to consider. But I think overall, in the general theme of what we're looking to do, it's kind of trying to identify potential areas of, that we don't cover today. Also satisfaction with what we do.
Any other comments? So I have a motion and a second to approve the survey as is. Any amendments? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. One last item to bring up also, as if you didn't like surveys enough, we got one more for you. Mr. Geddes was kind enough to put together a survey that we talked about quite a time ago about reaching out to families who don't have students in the district, or maybe who are just coming back into the district, to figure out, hey, what needs weren't we met? Mr. Geddes, if you don't mind just refreshing our memory on that.
It was an attempt to find out why we were losing students to, whether it be a tri-county, a Foxborough regional, and to try to get more detail as to why. Was it just for academic reasons? Are you sending your student to St. John's or Bishop Fee just because of religious education, or is there more to that? So just trying to get more information on why we're losing those students to other schools, because there are significant financial impacts associated with those departures from the district. So if there are some commonalities that we can address some of those concerns, then it's worth considering. So we'll be updating what had initially been presented to the committee a while back with the help of Ms. Regan, and also including this as an ancillary portion, or maybe just a slight connection to the Be Heard movement in terms of equity and access. So we should be bringing that forward soon.
And Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report. We will be back in action next month.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn. Last item on our agenda is open forum. Anyone who would like to address the committee at open forum? I don't see anybody, so I will close open forum and entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Good job with the report out. Good job with the report.